Okay, today we are going to talk about lesson 1110, chapter 11, lesson 10. This is the last lesson in chapter 11, and then we are done with that. We are talking specifically today about something called functions, and specifically linear functions. You may have remembered from elementary school when you made input-output machines. Maybe that was like 4th grade, something like that. This is going to be kind of similar to that. If you use that knowledge, you are going to do pretty well on this. You have a number that you are going to input into a machine, and something is going to happen to that number, and it is going to put out a different number. If you look at this little table right here, we have input a 3, and the machine has output a 12. That same machine, if we input a -7, it will output a -28. And if you are thinking, you can see that there looks like it's a multiply by 4 relationship. So this function machine is taking our input and multiplying it by 4 in order to get our output. This is kind of the general idea of what we are doing today. Next, we are going to talk about something called a function table. This right here is a function table. It is a table that tells you the input and the output of the function. I want you to right now write down this highlighted function. Output equals input times -2. Write that down. You do not yet need to copy down the input-output table. You can see it right here, and I will show you how it works. If you take the output, which will end up going right here when we are done, and that input that we put into the machine ends up being multiplied by -2. That is the rule that we have created. So right here you have an input of -1. If we put that -1 into the machine, if that is our input, you should know that -1 times -2, two negatives multiplied equals a positive. That means that our output is 2, and that would go in the blank. If we input instead a 1 instead of a -1, 1 times -2, 1 times -2 is -2, and there we have our output of -2. And then lastly, if we were to just choose the choose the input of 3, 3 times -2, as you can see, is -6. That is our output. It's a pretty simple thing, making a table. You put in some sort of value, you get out some sort of value based on what the rule is. In this case, it's a multiply by -2. Next, I want you this time to actually copy down this input-output table just as it appears right now. Put these numbers in for the input. We'll figure out the outputs in a minute. Write down output equals input divided by 4, which ends up being, if I used blanks, output equals input divided by 4. You take a minute to copy that down. Your teacher will hit pause on the video so you have enough time to do that. Now that you have had a chance to copy down the input-output machine, it looks to me right here that we are inputting a 16. What that would look like is if we input the 16, you should know that 16 divided by 4 is 4. Therefore, the output value that you can now write into your table is 4. Right here it says the next input value is negative 24. Where are these input values coming from? We're just kind of choosing them at random. Whoever made up this table originally just picked these few numbers. We'll get into more of how we choose our inputs later. So if you, pardon me, that's incorrect. If you input a negative 24, as it says right here, negative 24 goes in the blank. Negative 24 divided by 4, negative divided by a positive is a negative. We should have a negative 6. We can put a negative 6 in the table. And then lastly, we have an input of positive 36. 36 divided by 4 is, of course, 9. So, of course, we can put a 9 into the output spot. Your next job is to try one on your own. Copy down this input-output table just as it appears. Copy down output equals input minus 8. Copy and complete the table. Fill in the output values just as we did before over here. Your teacher will push pause on the video and give you some time to do that. Answers will be filled in 3, 2, 1. Here they are. Those are the values that you should have in your table. Some of you get confused still when you are subtracting with integers. So I have rewritten on the side over here all of the subtraction problems rewritten as adding the opposite. This is what you should have in your table. What we are going to get into next is learning how we can graph these function tables on a coordinate graph. The most important thing you need to know in order to do that is to know that when we talk about outputs, they're the same thing as a y value on a coordinate graph using the y-axis. Any input value is the same as an x. X's are inputs, y's are outputs. So here's what that is going to look like when we earlier did example 1 and had output equals input times negative 2. We're going to rewrite it and change it as y equals x times negative 2. It looks like that when you condense everything together. Y equals negative 2 times x, or the output equals negative 2 times our input. Let's create a new table, a new function table that has x's and y's on it. Here is the table that I have created. You don't have to copy this down yet. Just watch what is going on. Here is my input x. Here's my output y. I'm taking all of my x's, multiplying by them by negative 2. There's your output of y. So if I take an x value of 2, multiply it by negative 2, I get a y value of negative 4. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Positive 1. Whoa. Positive 1 times a negative 2 is a negative 2. We have 0 times negative 2. Negative 1 times negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2. Those output or y values end up looking like this. Now, what you need to realize is that every one of these horizontal rows ends up being an ordered pair that can be graphed. Point 2, negative 4, 1, negative 2, 0, 0, negative 1, 2, negative 2, 4. Those are 5 ordered pairs right there that we can put on a graph. I'll show you that in a second. Here's a different example. Here is a different function. This function is y equals x plus 3. My inputs are my x's, my outputs are my y's. Every one of my x inputs gets a 3 added to it to get my output. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2. 0 plus 3 is 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. 2 plus 3 is 5. Now these are ordered pairs. On the x-axis, negative 2. On the y-axis, 1. Negative 2 to the left, up 1, there it is. 1, negative 1, 2 is graphed right there. 0, 3, 1, 4, 2, 5. You will see that all those points are in a line. That's what we want to happen. So let's go back one slide. I can create a y-axis and an x-axis. That is not a very good x-axis. That's a little bit better right there. Maybe I'll move it up to here. I'm going to move it up to right there. Hopefully you can do better at drawing a straight line on your grid paper, better than I can do. I'll get those points on there for you. They'll be coming up right about now. There you see the points that I have just graphed. Here, here, there in the middle, here, and way down there. Maybe you can see that. They are all in this diagonal line, a nice straight line. That is a linear or line function that we have just made. Here is your next job. I want you to write down this function, y equals x minus 3, on your paper. Create this function table where you have your x's, your inputs on the left, your y's, your outputs on the right. Since your inputs, you can choose whatever you want to. Let's make it nice and simple and start at negative 2 and go to positive 2. Negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. Put those 5 in there. Fill out the outputs. And then on your grid paper, I want you to create a coordinate graph and plot those points on the graph. I want you to do that right now. Your teacher's going to push pause on the video, work at your desk for a few minutes, and then we can compare and see what we come up with, and I'll put the answers up shortly. Here's what you should have on your paper. I rewrote the subtraction problems as adding the opposite until I saw the pattern. These are the correct x's and y's, the correct inputs and outputs. Here's what it will look like on the graph. I dragged the table over here just like this. Here are the 5 points plotted. They make this line like this, and you can certainly connect them with a line. And you would see where the next points would even go if you continued on that line. Doing this type of thing is what your practice assignment is going to look like tonight. You take your function, which in this case, your function is y equals x minus 3. You create the function table, the input-output table, the values of the x's and y's, fill it in, and then you graph your points. That is your job.